years of preparing for it in the classrooms, get you ready to actually do the work. There's a jump in academic writing, and I was really anxious about that. And I'd say probably my biggest worry was the academia side of things, because for me, on my personal journey, is I'm dyslexic, and the academia side has been quite a struggle. I was really anxious about it, to the extent that, every time there was a new assignment and new learning, I was really anxious about how I was going to put that into the next assignment and the next assignment. But I mean, I've got through up to now. I've done all the assignments and the feedback has been good, and I'm learning as I go. But I suppose the growth and the strength in the group in general is incredible. And the power that I learned and gained from our group as friends, as colleagues, has been just mind blowing. So the journey so far, and the fact that I'm actually sitting in the chair seeing clients, seems a bit hard to believe at times. I struggled with parts of year two. I struggled sometimes with the online piece. One of the modules was online, and I found that quite difficult for me personally. Again, going back slightly to the dyslexia piece, I struggle with trying to obtain online at times, and it can be an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were times when I genuinely questioned whether I was cut out for this too. I went through that journey. Am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? But there was always someone there to guide and support me. And, even the way the assignments are structured and the modules, and being able to check in twice a year with support and PCI and colleagues, has really helped make the journey a lot easier for me. So it's been an amazing journey, and I'm really proud of the fact that I made it through year two.
Yeah. And it is a wonderful achievement, as we finished up recently together with the summer school. Wonderful on personal development. If I was to ask you, Dave, looking back on the past year, what would you say has been the highlight of the year, or highlights of the year for you in particular? That in particular you'd like to mention?
Oh, there's been many. I mean, there's been many,
Okay.
many highlights. I suppose one of the highlights would have to be the client work. I mean, it would have to be, because that's what we're here for in the first place. That's what we're striving towards. And to think that this time last year, really, when I finished summer school, we were doing 10-minute triads, to now a year later being actually in the chair seeing clients, is what it makes it all worthwhile. I think the growth in the group and learning and making new friends and colleagues has been incredible. And I do feel that it'll be friends and acquaintances for life. I think the additional learning as well, Colm, is huge. I mean, personal development module, for example, and I'm not just saying it because you were, the tutor on it, but I mean, it really, you have to dig deep into the self. There's nowhere really to hide, and it's fascinating, and it's getting to understand how it all works and why. I know there was elements of CBT which I found fascinating, and then the skills work itself. As I said, stepping up to 50-minute triads and supporting each other and learning and growing in a group. And I feel I've really grown as a person. I've really grown as a student, and that's all thanks to the work of the modules, the lecturers, and as it's made so easy to learn, and it's so relatable that a wise man once said to me that it's about the chair. Every time you're struggling, just bring it back to the work in the chair. So being able to sit in the chair, and also being back in the classroom, during COVID was really tough. A lot of us were learning online, and it was difficult, and it's just not the same. So I'd say, that's why we're studying in the first place, is to sit with clients, and being able to do that and being part of the journey has been an absolute privilege.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate that. And as you say, one of the highlights was the client work, starting to develop your own therapeutic relationship with your own client base is wonderful. But also you mentioned about the group learning, the learning with your colleagues in the class. And as you say, it is wonderful to have that experience, to be back in the classroom again with your colleagues, learning together, learning from each other, because it isn't about the lecturers, it's the module belongs to the students, and it's about that learning from each other is wonderful. Yeah.
I probably never, when I started this course, I probably didn't give as much attention, or I didn't have much of an awareness around how important the group is to support and learn each other, and it's just the more we do it, like summer school in particular, because you're together for 4 days and you really grow and connect, and the learning and growth and supporting each other is just it's a huge part of what we're doing, and I'm in a very I'm in a great group, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah. And you obviously provide a huge amount of learning to the group yourself in terms of your experience. And that particular point about you know, uh, we're training people not to be academics per se, but we're training people to be clinicians. Yeah. Um, can I ask Dave, in terms of looking at the modules that you've studied for the past year or two of your studies, what module work gave you the greatest insights, if that's fair to ask? Like what particular module, um, provided, that insight for you? And maybe why? Why was it? Which of the modules kind of challenged you the most?
Um, I'd say the one I probably enjoyed the most and grew the most was probably personal development. Primarily for many different reasons, but like for example, we learned about trust and the
Yeah,
rational self in therapy, and we got to explore the self. And
yeah,
I touched on it earlier, but there is really nowhere to hide. You have to dig deep and you have to really do the work. We learned
yeah,
about the importance of, for example, journaling. It's such a powerful tool. The self and our needs and the loss of selfhood. We went into the self in therapy and the journey
yeah.
of as a therapist. And I mean, you touched on the likes of Glasser and many different other theorists, Eric Byrne, and I did my assignment, for example, on I did it with Sternberg and I did it with
Okay.
Kubler-Ross. So I
Yeah,
mean,
sure.
the likes of transactional analysis, patterns and behaviors, and then like the family sculpt really stuck with me. And looking at the family and the family of origin, and then we did big sections on genograms, and looking really deep into the origins of the family, going back 3 generations.
Yeah,
And that made a huge difference to me, and it really sat with me in a good way. I mean, there was a lot of heavy stuff, Colm. There was a looking at the family and what helps shape you, can be
yeah,
difficult times too. Also, you did a lot about to know what is ours to carry and what isn't, and why we wear the masks we wear, and what
yes,
shapes us, and what voices, for example, are in our head, and who put them there, and what doesn't belong there. So,
mhm,
I suppose we also covered grief and loss and
yeah,
sexuality, which had
yeah,
elements of suicide, and it was a module that in summer school I wasn't particularly looking forward to for the
yeah,
reason of the topic. However, I think the
yes,
growth and the learning
yeah,
is huge out of it. Once
yeah,
you're able to talk and openly share about these things, it made it much easier to process through. So, I mean, I have to say there was loads of being able to sort of open up, bringing it back to the group again, being able to have these open
yeah,
conversations with the
yeah,
group
yeah,
about stuff that will potentially come into your room as a therapist, to air
yeah,
these conversations, and to hear others' views and others' opinions and others' thoughts on all this is such an important area. So, I mean, there's many different things I covered, but I mean, I do feel that, you know, I think some of the biggest growth was in that module and the deep dive into the self. I know I
yeah,
keep saying it,
sure,
but not
sure.
only as a person, but as a therapist, what are your
Yes,
modalities and questions that you need to ask? And when you're stepping into that world, what area would you like to work in, and what shapes you? So although there's challenges,
yeah,
um, I think CBT was hugely important too. We got to learn a lot about how it works, its origins, how it's going to be useful in client work, and when
sure,
and where it should be used. And then I suppose the the skills practice itself, as I said, within less than a year, you're gone from 10-minute triads, and we were laughing as a group because, like, we were talking this year about, like, this time last year we were struggling to how
yeah,
we're going to fill 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
yes,
What are we going to
yes.
do for 10 minutes? What are we going to talk about? And now you're doing 50, and it's like, and the time flies by, and you're like, oh my,
Time flies,
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
think the important bit is that it's important to take them leaps of faith, and just see what happens, and in the
yes,
safety of the room, the safety of a lecturer holds you and supports you. So
yeah,
the whole lot of it has been transformational, but I would lean towards personal development personally.
Sure, sure. And the energy you bring to it, even Dave, even as you recount what has been a very, very busy year, obviously year 2 of your studies, and certainly with personal development, CBT skills, and everything else in between. But that, the challenge to develop one's own personal awareness in the group work, in the class work, but also in personal therapy, a huge challenge for people, that all of these lines of class work, personal therapy, clinical work, they're all a bit like the Lewis tracks, working in parallel and feeding off each other and feeding into each other. Yeah. Earlier, Dave, you spoke about client work, and you almost lit up, when you mentioned client work. Can I ask, how have you managed the clinical aspects of the course training? How have you managed the clinical work?
I suppose, I mean, time management is probably the best advice I could say to anyone. Time management is key. It's your best friend. It's about sitting down at the start of the year and saying, right, what's ahead of me? And that's what I had to do. One of the things for me is that I needed to get a different diary just for this, and I needed to mash them together and say, right, what's coming ahead in January or September, October, November, December. What's coming up? What do I need to look for? I need to look at. So I need to find a supervisor.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
I need to look at all my getting signed off for client work is very important. And when does that have to be in by? My study, my assignments, and I think I've managed it very well in the fact that I've had to sort of say to family and friends as well, I'm not going to be as available as I was. And that's the reality of it. It's not personal.
Sure.
I've a lot of stuff to do. My academia is really, really important, and I need to put my 100% into it. So I'm not going to be as available as I was, and that's just the way it is, I'm afraid. And look, I'm very supportive people around me, but I just have to be a bit patient with me. I'd say finding a good supervisor, Colm, is absolutely vital. And I'm lucky to have one. I probably didn't understand the role of the supervisor properly until we started going into it, and now I see that it's absolutely vital to be able to help you with your work in the chair. It's a different dynamic. It's a different, so it's like acquaintances sharing stories as opposed to a therapeutic alliance as such. And the experience of the supervisor is able to help you with the work in the clients for when you do get stuck, or when there's challenges, or when there's transference, or and be able to see that. So, I struggled, I suppose. I probably put too much pressure on myself, Colm, if I'm being totally honest with you. I probably tried to have everything too perfect, which doesn't exist. I probably had tried to have stuff in too early when I didn't need to. And that's just me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But I think the learning for that is that I shouldn't have put that much pressure.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, Dave, to hear you talk about client work, the clinical aspects, and in terms of time management, because it's a skill that we certainly hope that students learn in year 1 of this particular professional training. Time management is a real important skill for us as therapists, and yet the energy that you brought to the clinical practice really important there. And in terms of pacing yourself, in terms of self-care, and even being able to say to dear friends, look, I'm doing this professional honours degree in counselling and psychotherapy. I'm not as available as I used to be, and bringing people on board to say Tuesday night, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, that's my clinical time, and I'm not available. It's almost educating those around you. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's bringing them on the journey with you, and it's saying to them, look, this is really, really important to me. I'm putting 4 years of my life into this. I was lucky enough to win the scholarship, so I don't have the financial part of it, but everybody else does. So financially, emotionally, and time wise, you do have to, for me particularly, I can only speak on behalf of me, I have to go all in and I have to give this everything I have. I
Yeah,
can't do half measures. So for me, I just had to say to people, look, and I also suppose, Colin, what you said there is hugely important. Self-care, you've got to take time away too, from the academia side, from even the client work. There's times when you just need to take a break and just
yeah,
go for a walk, breathe, recalibrate and say, right,
yeah,
come back into the room then when you're ready. Because I mean,
sure.
it's a lot, but I think self-care is key. And in fairness to PCI, I mean, it's one of the messages that's said over and over again throughout this course since I've started. Self-care, it's about looking after the self. It's hugely important. You need to take that time. And that message is hammered home is the wrong word, but that message is reiterated over and over again for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
important.
Yeah. And we often say, Dave, that your self-care as a therapist is really a cornerstone of your clinical practice. And just as we as therapists look after ourselves, the client is going to pick up on that and say, well, the therapist is looking after themselves. Maybe I need to focus on my own self-care as well, in terms of having breaks, in terms of availability, in terms of you know, proper quality time out, and holidays and breaks in therapeutic work itself is very therapeutic. And having a break from clinical work is certainly very productive and therapeutic for the therapist and also for the client. Yeah, really, really important. Can I ask Dave also, if you were to look at it overall, how have you found, say, the structure of the BSc program in PCI College? If you were to look at the whole structure, uh, how have you found the structure of the degree?
I think after year one, I was panicking probably in year one. And then I suppose what happens is you hear little rumors then when you're coming to the end of year one that in year two you have to do this and you have to do this. And I probably projected too far ahead a little bit for me, right? But I think the structure has been very good.
Yeah,
The way the modules are structured has been great. You get to a week off in between modules, so you get to decompress a little bit, and then you have an assignment to start working on. But I think that week out is really important. I think the 5 week blocks are vital. I probably struggled somewhat with some of the modules in just relation to attention span. There's some days when you're not feeling it, there's some days when you're a bit tired and they're a bit more challenging. But the way they're structured and the way the workload is done is extremely good, and it allows you to decompress. So, I mean, for example, our CBT module was online,
sure.
and I might have struggled with that slightly with just the fact
Yeah,
that it was online.
yeah,
And it can be quite a heavy academic model as well. So it could be, but once you get the hang of it and learn, I'm personally a bit more of a visual learner, so I take in more information from watching videos and stuff like that.
okay.
But again, we got through it and it was fantastic and I really grew from it. But I think it's about pacing yourself. I haven't done a lot of the academic stuff. For me was about pacing yourself on that
Yeah,
too, and I think that's very well structured. I
yes,
think the support from the colleges has been amazing too. So if you were ever in trouble and there was an issue, you were always had someone you could ring or contact. I had to sort of get an extension on one of my assignments for other reasons, and they were
yeah,
very supportive in that too. So
yeah,
um I think I've managed the structure and the way it's laid out very well, and it's it's important, I think, as well to try and decompress between modules if you can.
yeah.
So
Okay,
take a bit of time away and say, right, I'm just parking that for a while. I'm putting
right.
it, and I get
Yeah,
ready into the next module. But you do kind of have to plan ahead as well, for, as I said at the start, for each month, what module is coming up, what
yeah,
extra bits are coming up, and just make sure you have an idea
yeah,
and you've
sure.
some sort of a plan.
Of course, some sort of a plan. And as you say, you're a visual learner. You like to, see things visually, engage with material that way. And that's wonderful because many people have different ways of learning. And it brings us really on to my next question, just to consider, you know, um, how have you enjoyed the work of flipped learning? you know, in the classwork, because we know flip learning, it's part of academic colleges now, that, you know, they provide flip learning in terms of, you know, pre-reading, pre-material, not just classwork, but also afterwards as well. So it's before, during, and after, and it's seeing the lecturer as hopefully a facilitator, you know, who's pointing the direction for people, pointing the way. But how have you found flip learning, Dave, so far?
Yeah, when the concept was put, I didn't really know what it was, to be totally honest with you. But when I started looking into it, and the college explained it, I was quite excited about it, because like it's a different educational approach. Like, it reverses in a way the traditional way academia is delivered. You know, it
Yes,
allows for us as students to do a bit of reading outside the classroom, you know,
okay,
to watch some videos outside the classroom and other resources. So I loved it. It really, really suited me, because it allowed me to dedicate time to do that in my own space, where there was no other outside influences, where I could just
okay,
watch and learn. It allowed me to digest a
okay,
lot of the information.
yes,
And it kind of helped me shift my focus,
yes,
because, as I say,
yes,
there was no distractions of the class or the group.
yes, sure,
It
sure,
allowed me to then sort of prepare for when we were going in for that module, to kind of say, right, this is what we need to read for this reason, and to look
yes,
at it and to say, right, where does that begin as a discussion then as a group? So you go in
okay,
and open nearly with the discussion of the group, and I think it allows for the teachers to use valuable class time for more interactive and collaborative kind of learning experiences.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and it asks the students to participate in practical exercises and projects. So it puts the onus
mhm,
back on us. So I really enjoyed it. I think it's a valuable piece of new learning for me. I've never experienced it before, and I think as a group, the feedback from a lot of the group was it was really important for us to
sure,
because there was
sure,
discussions about some of the flip learning pieces as a group, which was
yes,
great too.
yeah,
And it opens up a huge interactive discussion that you've already done the work on at home. So I
yes,
suppose the last bit for me is it allows for flexibility in terms of
yes,
do it when it suits you. It
yes,
allows students to access, I suppose, materials outside of the classroom, and it caters for different learning styles, which is why it really appealed to me. And
sure,
it was great for me with someone with a learning difference, especially with the videos and the interactive
yes,
pieces that I could look
yeah,
at, and I could do it at my pace, if that
great.
makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. I appreciate that in terms of flip learning, understanding it, a wonderful new concept in terms of training in counselling and psychotherapy and all other academic programs in many colleges throughout the country now. And Dave, if it's okay with you, I just see some meeting chat there. Can we just move to some of those questions?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that
go
okay
ahead.
with you?
Yes, of course.
There's a question there. Are you working a full-time job while studying at PCI? If so, how do you find the balance between the two, between PCI training and also full-time job? Would you like to address that, Dave?
Well, I am working full time. Yeah, I am.
Yeah,
And part of that was probably what I said earlier, is about time management and about
yeah.
being a little bit more selfish with your time, and selfish in a good way.
Okay.
I work full time. I study. I'm a father. I'm a parent.
Yeah,
I'm in a relationship. There's lots of different pieces of the
yeah,
pie, and
yeah,
I have to allocate different pieces to different people. You know, for
yeah,
want of a better word. So it's manageable. It's very, very
yeah,
doable. But you got to be a little bit selfish with your time. You've got to explain to people in advance why. And
yeah,
once they're on board, it makes the process much, much easier to be able to
yes,
say, sorry, I need
yes,
to go and spend 2 hours on an assignment, or sorry, I have
yeah,
clinical supervision now,
yeah,
or, but it's very, very manageable. And it's very doable, but it's just about carving out the right space and time. And
yes,
I think
yes.
never let the time put you off doing it, because you'll find the
Yes,
time.
of course. Yes, very good. Appreciate that, Dave. Good time management is a wonderful skill. You probably answered this question earlier, but let's just put it out there. What has been your high point on the course so far, Dave?
Um, I suppose the high point has to be the sitting in the chair. I mean, I'd
Client
say
work.
for me,
Okay.
client work has to be the high point, but also to be, from a personal perspective, I think winning the scholarship was just an amazing way to start my academic journey. I mean, I was so privileged and proud to have won it, to be even have my name in the hat, to be down to the last five. And I remember the phone call when I got to say that I won it. It was just an incredible achievement for me. And I think that also, I mean, client work would be the number one, but also as part of that, actually finding a group of incredible, intelligent, inspirational people to learn with has been incredible. And I do feel that we'll be friends for life as part of it.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Dave. And another question from one of the listeners is, was there a moment when you realized the degree course was the course for you, or counselling in general?
That's a good question. I mean, as I said earlier, I had many challenges where I wasn't sure it was for me at all, and I was debating whether I should be doing this. And I had conversations going, am I on the right track? What am I doing here? You know, but to answer that question, I would honestly say, and this is the truth, is the day I sat in the chair with the first client and they left that when they finished the session and they left the room, I sat there for a few minutes and I just went, wow. And then I said to myself, if this was an actual job and it was my first day, I've never felt more comfortable in a role in my life. Even though I was quite anxious about the first client, but I just felt it's where I belonged. And I suppose during the course, other people saying, you know, how what you're saying is so important, and your voice being heard. There was times when I kind of went, yeah, I think I'm on the right track. But definitely when I saw the first client, I just knew it's where I belonged.
Yes, and what an experience, Dave. Your first client, the client has left the room, and you reckoned, you know, some part of you had come home. Wonderful.
Yeah, 100%. That would be a good way of putting it. I came home. Yeah. I just felt where I belonged.
Sure. Wonderful, Dave. Yeah. Another question is, I'm thinking of applying for the BSc Hons Counselling and Psychotherapy at PCI College. What one piece of advice would you give me to get off to a good start?
I'd say, look, I mean, just be kind and gentle to yourself. It's a long road ahead, but it's very doable if you break it down into little chunks. Carve out your time is really, really important. I'd say if there's any learnings for me to tell someone as well, when I look back on my journey and I'm only in year 2, is that try and enjoy it a bit more. I probably put too much pressure on myself and too much expectations on me, and there was times when I didn't enjoy aspects of it because I was panicking about what was coming around the corner. So just try and enjoy it module by module. And year 2 is a milestone. Once it's finished, you're halfway through your academic journey. But I would definitely say just go for with open arms and just embrace it. And there's so much learnings on a personal note and development and academic. It's just an incredible journey. I wish the best of luck in your journey.
Yeah. And thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. And it is a wonderful experience. And Nicola just says thanks so much for that, Dave. Amazing to hear you talk so highly of the course. I'm really looking forward to starting in September. So Nicola is starting in September. Fantastic.
Brilliant. Best of luck.
Yeah. And another question, if we could look at that, Dave, can you explain the 450 hours in more detail, please? Is this separate to the degree course? That's a question from a listener.
Yes, you've 120 hours to do as a trainee.
That's right. As a trainee,
change over, and you have 450 hours. It is, 450 hours is separate to the course. Yes. That's another piece of time you have to carve out to allow that them hours to build before you can get, accredited. You have to 450 hours done, including supervision hours as well. Then on top of that, so again, it goes back to making sure you're really, really diligent about your time and how you carve it out. But there's always enough time to get it done once you plan ahead.
Super. Thanks, Dave. And again, a question for Dave. My question is, did Dave complete the short online course before the BSc, and how did he find them both?
I did the certificate course before I went into I did the certificate before I went into
That's referring
the
to the
BSc
certificate. Yeah.
full course. The reason I did a certificate. Yes, the reason I did a certificate was because I just wanted to get an understanding and a grounding of what it was about, to see was I on the right track, because I wasn't sure when I signed up to do it. And I think the foundation course certificate, was a fabulous way of getting a flavour of everything, an overview. I got to do a little bit, I did my first academic assignment, which was I ever done. I haven't done in years, and I got a full flavour, and I got to meet some incredible people. And it was after the certificate that I said to myself, yeah, I'm definitely on the right track and I want to go ahead with this. But I'm really glad I did the certificate first, for me personally,
Yes.
just to get a full overview of what
Yes.
potentially you're stepping into as a career.
Yeah, and the certificate is, I suppose, helping people get on the glide slope, so to speak, of, if you're interested in it, well, this will give you insights into what the course will hold, certainly. But it is inviting people to, shall we say, gather their thoughts to take on this professional degree and training. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it's great.
you did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's a great, but it also gives you a sort of foot back into academic writing and that type of getting your head into that
Yeah.
space. And it's not too heavy, the certificate course. So the academic stuff is it's just a good step before you go into the BSc course.
Sure. Yeah. If we were to ask you, Dave, looking back on your journey in the college and as a recipient of the Lee McCarthy Scholarship, what would you say has been the highlight of the past few years? You mentioned client work already. You mentioned that learning with your group, with your colleagues in class, that you mentioned the personal journey. You mentioned also the hard work that you've obviously put into your training so far. And particularly else you'd like to mention?
I think my personal growth, to be honest with you, Colm, has been huge too. I mean, my growth as an individual, as a
Okay.
person, outside of the college, just as a person, because
Yeah.
of the work that we've done and because of the learning, has been hugely, probably underestimated that side of it, really. I didn't realize how much growth I'd get on myself and why.
Yeah.
And if I never stepped into the chair and decided this wasn't for me, I think the growth I've grown as a person alone, is worth it. And that might sound a bit mad, but I mean, I
Uh-huh.
think winning the scholarship has just been amazing, and I'm really proud of myself for that. And I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that very often, but I mean, I suppose I'm very lucky I don't have the financial costs associated with the course, but I mean, winning the scholarship for me is something that I'll treasure. But I think the flip side to winning the scholarship, if I'm totally honest as well,
Yeah. Yes. Please go ahead.
is
Yeah.
I probably felt a bit of unnecessary pressure on myself because of winning the scholarship, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Right.
I
Okay.
felt that I had to be kind of that there was this big expectation on me that I was going to be Scholar of the Year. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
was me. But
Okay.
I think, again, what I said a few times is the growing as a group and the support of each
Yes.
other and making friends for life. And then when you do get to sit in the chair, it is a little bit surreal that you're actually
Yes.
doing the work.
Yes.
You couldn't wait to get signed off, and you spent a year and a half particularly talking about the chair, but when you're actually in it, it makes it all worthwhile. And I
Yes.
do
Yes.
feel that it's the first time, as I said, I ever felt so comfortable in doing something, and I'm really,
Yeah.
really proud of the journey so far. But it's been amazing.
Yeah. Sure. Thanks, Dave. We have another question here. For someone considering studying counselling and psychotherapy, are there any books you would recommend reading before applying for the course? I guess that's either one of us. I suppose it's a question for Colm or Dave. Yeah. I mean, is that something you'd like to throw in the pot there, Dave?
I did the Dave Mears book, which was a personal development. I read his book, and it was just a kind of a 29 little chapters on therapy and being a
Yes.
therapist. And
Yes.
I found that really, because I did my assignment on that, I think, in the certificate course as a start, and I found that
Yes.
really, really beneficial. Um, I suppose I would honestly say maybe there's going to be enough reading to be doing when the course starts. There's going to be
Yes.
enough books. You have a lot to
Sure.
cover.
Sure.
I would say maybe just dip your toe and look at some stuff that you're interested in, maybe the likes of modalities or tiers that you're interested in. But I'd
Yes.
say there's enough to be doing when the course starts without reading too much before. And I just have one
Yes.
there on the shelf, Colm. Sorry, I'll just
Yeah.
grab it,
Sure. Go ahead, Dave. Yeah. Yeah.
because I
Somebody.
find this one
Yeah.
really, really important.
Yes.
I got the handbook I bought the Handbook of Individual Therapy, 6th edition by Wendy Dryan and Andrew Reeves, and I find that really interesting. That covers
Okay.
the majority of modalities and theorists, and it's a good point if you want to just dip in and out of different chapters and get a
Yeah.
better understanding.
Very good, Dave. Thanks for that. If I was to add my own tuppence to it, well, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, the meaning of life, because therapy is the journey inwards, so that with clients, you're able to journey inwards with them. Also, anything by Irvin D. Yalom, Love's Executioner and Other Stories, really excellent. Gives you wonderful vignettes about what counseling is actually about. And also his, The Gift of Therapy is another interesting book by Yalom, very much, very humanistic understanding of the process of working and dealing with people, in the work of the clinic. Think anything by Yalom, really interesting, and very, if you like, accessible, they're just two, for example, Yalom and Viktor Frankl, very, very accessible. But I do agree with you, Dave. It's much more than the books, with respect. It's about a learning, it's about a personal development. And what Rogers himself says, when the client actually sits with us in the room, all of the theories that we've learned go out the window. Because he says the person is coming to a therapist not to see if they understand theories, but to really enter into a relationship. And I think that's really at the heart of all therapy. The healing bond in therapy is relationship. And I guess the relationship we have with ourselves is key to developing that therapeutic relationship with the client. I presume you'd agree with that, Dave. Yeah. 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 Just froze there for a second, I think. Yeah. You'd agree with that, Dave, about the importance of the therapeutic relationship.
I would, yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's all about the relationship, yeah. The relationship with the self is very important as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. One question I have, Dave, what advice would you give to students of the college who are currently finishing year one of their studies, and they're coming into year two of their studies in September? What bit of advice would you offer them, because they're facing into a year that you've just completed the week before last?
Well, let's say congratulations. Firstly, I'm finishing year one. It's a huge
Yeah,
achievement. It's a
yeah,
huge achievement. You should be really, really proud of yourself. I'd say secondly, don't be afraid of the work ahead, and don't be afraid of the workload that's coming, because it's very manageable. It's easily done if, as I say, if you carve out the time.
yeah.
Speak to your family and let them know what's ahead. I'd say make sure you have lots of fun along the way, Colm, because the
Yes,
journey is great, but you need to have a bit of fun and you need to enjoy the process as well. Don't
yes,
look
yes,
too far ahead, but look enough
yes,
ahead so you're able to prepare. And like in March, for example, for them people now in March 2024, they'll be in the chair. So that's something to think about. They will
yes,
be doing the
yes,
work of sitting with
of
clients in
course.
March 2024 potentially. And that
Yeah,
isn't that far away.
it isn't that
Um,
far away. And
Managing, finding a good supervisor column is hugely important.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's really, and finding and thinking, not quite yet, but probably in October, thinking about placement. Have it in the back of your
okay.
head. Is there
Yes,
somewhere
yes,
around you'd like to do placement? Is there some, place that calls out to you? And make sure you take a lot of time, Colin, to detach,
yes. Okay.
to switch
To
off,
detach, to switch
to
off.
take time
Okay.
to
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah,
to mind the
yeah,
self. It's really, really important.
yeah,
And
yeah.
look, I mean, you've probably done the hardest part, which is year one, because it's the
Yes,
big step and it's
yes,
the leap.
yes. Yeah,
And that, don't be afraid to ask for help and lean on the college for support and the lecturers and
yeah,
anyone and your fellow colleagues. If you need help and you're struggling, don't be afraid
yes,
to ask for.
yes.
PCI are always very considerate of the well-being of the students, and self-care is key. So
Sure.
just make sure if you are struggling and you need help that you lean on the college and the supports, because that's what they're there for.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Dave. Appreciate that. And it's interesting you mentioned the word supervisor there, finding a supervisor in year 2. And unfortunately, we're stuck with that term supervisor, as if they had super X-ray vision or something, which of course they don't. It's an awful pity we never adopted the word mentoring, that the supervisor is
Mm.
actually a mentor and provides the hammock of support that with our clinical work we can fall into it and just share our aspects of our clinical work that need kind of support. And you found a good supervisor, Dave. Yes. You found it supportive?
Oh, hugely. Yeah, I did. I mean, as I said at the start of this, I
Mm-hmm.
probably didn't realize the importance of the supervision, and it's hugely important for, as you say, the hammock is the best way of putting it. They've years of experience. They're giving you advice. They're giving you direction. They're giving you kind of, if you're struggling, here's something you could do. Here's a question you could ask. Where's this coming from in the self? So it's hugely important, and it's a vital part of the process. And
Yes.
I'm really glad that I've found a really supportive, knowledgeable, wise supervisor who's been a
Yeah.
great support to me.
Sure. Wonderful. Yeah. One other question has come in there. What would your advice be to someone questioning the course who might feel a little scared about what could personally come up while training? How would you like to kind of deal with that, Dave?
Yeah, well, look, I'd say, I mean, I probably said it earlier in a way that there's nowhere really to hide. You have to be prepared to do the work. I
Yeah.
describe it as, and I think I've used it in the class, I describe it as probably you have to get into the roots
Yes. Yes.
of the tree. You have to
Yeah.
get what's underneath there. But don't be afraid of it, because if you haven't done the work on yourself, I think it's going to be very hard to sit in the chair and support the client, because you need to do the work and you need to be able to say, okay, I've done that piece, and I'm not transferring that onto a client or whatever. But don't be afraid of it. I mean, I was terrified of doing it too, and we all
Yeah.
were. I've
Yeah.
seen our group grow as individuals because of it,
Sure.
and me personally.
Sure.
But I
Yes.
think the work is the journey, and the journey leads
Yes.
to the success, and the success leads to sitting in the chair with the client, and
Yeah.
holding and supporting them. So it is
Yeah.
very daunting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah. So it is daunting. It is daunting, Dave, but it's not impossible, what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and
Yeah.
look, the other side of it is your own. This is where your own personal therapy comes in too. Your personal therapy.
Yeah. I think yeah. I think the signal might have dipped out there a bit, Dave. I think the signal may have dipped out there a little
Have
bit.
I frozen, Colm?
Yeah, it just frozen there for a little bit. Maybe I'll just pick it up that yeah,
I
personal
was just saying, I
therapy
suppose the
as you were
personal
talking.
therapy bit.
Yeah, hugely important that the work of personal therapy is, I suppose, one of the cornerstones of being an effective therapist. The more personal therapy work I can do, the more I can, shall we say, journey with the client. I think that's fair, Dave, isn't it? Yeah,
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 yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
sure. Yeah. And I suppose another thing for the person who asked the question, just to say, um, you know, everybody is fearful of, shall we say, going into themselves and reflecting on their own sense of self. And yes, there is an element of fear about it, but it's not impossible. And I suppose just to encourage anybody considering it, that it's difficult and demanding, but it's not impossible. And I suppose to encourage people who are thinking about it, because we do know that the work of therapy is painful and demanding. And this training is not for the faint-hearted, but it's also not impossible. And people come into this training with many gifts, many talents, oodles of life experience, and that goes into the pot of the learning of everybody. And if I'm scared in the class, well, there are other people in the class who are scared about, shall we say, getting out of the shallow end of the pool and diving off the diving board into their own psyche, you know. It's challenging, but it's not impossible. Um, one other question, Dave, and I'm just mindful of our time, is you're aware that PCI College, you know, really focuses on the well-being of our students, you know. And I'm mindful as you face into the summer, can I ask, you know, as you move into these weeks of summer, how are you going to take a break from your studies to look after Dave? How are you going to look after yourself?
Yeah, it's a difficult one actually sometimes personally because I get so immersed in the course
Yeah.
that I find it hard at times to detach from it.
Okay.
And I'm learning now as I go. I'm going to take holidays, Colm. I'm switching off completely. I'm still doing client work through the summer, but I'm
Okay.
switching off completely. I'm going on holidays. I'm going to connect back in with family and friends a bit more. I'm going to have a bit of fun, Colm, and enjoy my summer and have a lot of laughs. And I'm just going to really
Yeah.
detach from the academic side of things and just sort of
Yeah.
be me, you know.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Sure.
Just have fun doing the things that I like to do, which is
Yeah.
outdoors, going to the beach, things that I like to do, spending time with family and friends, and not be immersed in the world of academia for a few months. It's
Sure.
going to be.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to that too.
Yeah, and that's maybe a skill as well, Dave, isn't it? That we switch on for the actual training, and when we come to break time, you switch off in a sense of that you give your energies to other important things in your life.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if there's any other questions we might have from the floor from anybody. You know, there doesn't seem to be any more questions currently, Dave. Okay. Um, is there anything else that you would like to add, Dave, as we finish up this evening?
I suppose. I mean, I'd like to say that anyone that's stepping into year two, I want to wish them the best of luck and enjoy the
Yeah,
journey,
yeah,
enjoy the learning and immerse yourself in it. Sometimes you can get bogged down in the detail of the client work and supervision and the step up in academia, and we can miss the actual growth in the journey and the learning itself if we look too far ahead. Year two is a milestone once you've finished your halfway through your academic journey. And this course so enjoy every minute of it. Don't be afraid to lean in and ask for help. If you are struggling,
yeah,
there's lots of support there around you. Use your fellow students, use the college, use the lecturers. And I suppose, a wise man once said to me that what really matters is the work that's done in the two chairs sitting opposite each other. And that's really what it's all about. And don't lose
yeah,
sight of that. And I suppose finally, personally, I'd like to say a massive thank you to everyone at PCI for all the support, and to win the Lee McCarthy Scholarship has been an honour and one of the biggest achievements of my life. And there's such a supportive institution, and learning has been a lot easier because I genuinely was terrified going into PCI
yeah. Okay,
because I'm dyslexic, because I didn't think I'd be able to do a lot of the assignments, and I have, and I've gone through them, and it's through the support. So the structures are in place for you to use, and from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank them, but I also want to wish everyone going into year two the best of luck. You've got
of
this.
course. Sure. You've got this, and that's wonderful, Dave. Thanks very much. And I really appreciate the energy that you brought into answering your questions, Dave, because you do bring an energy into the classroom, you bring an energy into your work, into your clinical work. And I want to say thanks very much for that, Dave. And on behalf of PCI College and all of our students going into year two, and all our students, and to those people listening, just say a very special word of thanks to Dave for giving us of your time. Thanks to people tuning in who've tuned in. I hope you got something from it in relation to PCI College and the programs it offers, certainly around the BSc. Thanks, Dave, for sharing of your learning. And of course, congratulations on finishing year two of your studies. And again, thanks to everybody for the wonderful questions. Really appreciate that. And maybe, Dave, on behalf of both of us, we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. and we'd like to wish them all a wonderful summer break. Enjoy the summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Enjoy the summer, and
Yeah.
as a wise man once said, go and delight the senses, you know? That wise
Delight
man
the
is you,
senses.
Colm, in case you're wondering.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody. Thank you, Dave, and thanks everybody for